Okay, today we're working on an 05 Corvette for a customer. This will be our third video. We did a video on just starting the job and then a video of pulling the unit out. A lot of people don't realize that they move the transmission to the very back of the car on the Corvettes, and the rear end physically bolts to the back right here. And then you have a long shaft that goes up to the front that mounts to the motor. Now, they got an adapter plate that you can adapt different bell housings to it, but the back of the tranny is a Corvette only design. They have a seal back here that maintains pressure inside the unit here, and then they have a seal in the rear end right here that keeps the rear end oil in the rear end. So we'll get this apart a little bit and see what it looks like on the inside. What you see here, here's a standard bell housing that would physically bolt on there, but you can put in a dune buggy, something like that, mount an LS right to here, mount the rear end right back here. This would be a cool rear mount dune buggy type deal or something, which would be pretty cool if you want to do it. You could do a lot of things with this case right here, but it is a special case. Probably very expensive too. It's got the true Corvette servo in this thing when I get it out. Now, it looks like here it's already had a shift kit or something put in it. We don't know if the unit's been in it or not, but when I see stuff like this, this is basically shift kit stuff. It pushes the piston in farther to make the clearance on the pin and the band travel length a lot smaller. So it does have a Corvette servo in it, and how you can tell is the size of this one here compared to the size of this one here in a standard vehicle. Okay, and then your Corvette looks like this here. Okay. That's how you can tell if it's a true Corvette servo. Now they still wear in this pin area right here, so you really want to check it and see if this pin wobbles. If it wobbles bad, even if it's a Corvette servo, put your new one in there, because they'll leak by that pin and cause failure. Now let me tell you, this is your 2.4 servo. It applies your second gear band and your overdrive band, and it is also a cushion for your third clutch apply. So when it pushes your band off, your third clutch oil comes in here, pushes the band off where your third clutch can apply. So this is your lockup O-ring right here. Now Corvette does have a different pan since there's no dipstick tube to check the tranny fluid. It has a fill and drain right here. You start the vehicle up, run it through the gears, you pump fluid in it till it runs out, run it through park, reverse, neutral, drive it around a block, come back, rack it up, pull that plug out and make sure fluid drains out. That's how you check the fluid on it. There's physically no other way. Try to get the tranny temperature up where it needs to be. Of course, it's a special pan. Now, we do have a lot of clutch material. I don't remember exactly why this unit come in for. This unit did come in from out of town.
It's cammed. It makes a little bit of power.
Does it?
Yeah, it makes some power.
So, of course, the Corvette does take a special filter than your standard 4060E 65 filter, just because of the pan design. It kind of sets in here, instead of flat, it kind of sets at an angle like this. So you better put the right filter on if you ever change it. Now, just by getting into this unit, I can already tell another sign that it's been rebuilt before. It's had a new aftermarket lockup switch spliced into the wiring right here. So that's another sign that it's been into before.
And the wiring's all messed up.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of go through some solenoids here, give you an idea what this stuff does. A lot of people don't know. This one here is your 3-2 downshift solenoid. So when you push the gas pedal to the floor, this commands a 3-2 passing gear downshift. This one right here is a pulse width modulating lockup solenoid. What they do is they lock the clutch up on the torque converter so soft they don't want you to feel it. So in high horsepower stuff like this one, we'll come in here and block this valve right here where it makes it just an on and off system and get rid of that pulse. That way it doesn't make a lot of heat. Now this solenoid here is the on and off solenoid here that physically locks the converter up right here on the bottom right here. And this is your PWM solenoid. Okay. Now this one here is your pressure control solenoid here. It controls all pressure through all shifts. Where a lot of the new ones have a pressure solenoid per shift, per solenoid. I mean, and then they went to one solenoid that controls it all. So now this one here, these here are your shift solenoids right here. The computer tells them to on and off, to make the training do what it's supposed to do. This is what we call a pillow switch. It's got a bunch of round little knobs in here like this. Let's see. Let me grab one real quick and show you.
There's a bunch in the shelf over there.
Here's an old one right here. But the computer fluid comes in here and pushes on these little pillows right here. And you can feel it click, 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 click. And when it does, the computer sees that pressure come on that switch right there. And now it knows that it made that shift into second or in fourth gear and stuff like that. That's how it knows it physically made the shift. Now there is a switch that goes on the side here on the shifter that moves like this, that also the computer sees, that makes the marker, actually it's right here, my son took it off, I didn't know it. It goes on here. When you move this is what you see light up in the dash.
Neutral safety.
A neutral safety switch for your park, reverse, neutral drive, or whatever in the dash right there. But this one here is the one that the computer physically sees to know that this tranny made the shift when it told it to make the shift. So now, just how this spins so freely right here, I can tell the O-rings are just totally wore out on this solenoid right here. You can tell that they just leak, don't fit in there.
Yeah, it didn't even pop out.
So these rubber solenoids here, after a rebuild, replace them definitely, because you'll have issues just with these solenoid seals leaking right here. The new solenoids will come with O-rings, but not all these solenoids are bad. You test them, see if they flow good. We have a tester that flows them and runs the solenoid to its test. If it's good, use it, because some of the new ones are worse than the old ones. So you got to be really careful on these right here. I wish I had time to do some rebuild videos, but my rebuild time on a lot of these are so long and intense that it just takes so long. Now, I did want to show you this real quick. A lot of people don't know. The clicking you feel in your shifter, when you move you feel it click, 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 click. That's what you're feeling right here. Click, 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 click. That's your park. That's park right there. And then you got your reverse, neutral, drive, second, or excuse me, third, second, low. That's how that works like that. So we had one come in the other day, locked in park, and I'll show you that in just a second, why it was locked in park. You can see these collect so much trash. This is an early design too. All the switch bodies are open, so any type of metal can lay in here and short this stuff out. The new style ones have a plastic cover that covers all this up right here, and it just exposes the pillows right here. So you always want to update that to the new design and just keep all that metal out there, because this causes really bad signals to the computer on what gear you're in. So false codes, all that type of stuff. This is a mess. This is your valve body. These are your shift valves here, down in here. This is your pulse with modulating valve that I was telling you about, that we work on and modify to make that lockup just come off and on instead of pulsing it on real softly, and makes it hold a lot stronger. Oh, also I want to show you, this is real critical. We had come in the other day on a custom vehicle. The early model, when you put this thing in the gear, you have to have an accumulator piston just like this over here. Let me find my... Try not to get too scattered here, but... So when you put this vehicle into gear, you have a piston in here that pushes on this spring right here. And so when you put it into gear, it pushes on this, and it softens the engagement of the clutch right here like this. Pushes down on it. Well, this one's already been updated. Normally they have a pin that goes through here and sets down in this little hole right here. Well, they did away with the pin and put a solid piston in there like this. Well, here's a plastic one. But normally this style right here comes with a plastic piston like this, and they break. Especially when you put a high boost valve in them or shift kit them, something like that. So you really want to check this and get rid of that plastic piston. If nothing, they make a aluminum piston just like this that'll go in here. You don't have to put this one in here like this. But this bore is still good, so he could have put a stock one in there. This is kind of for a bore that's bad, and that's what that does, stabilize the piston a little bit more. But now this here's the same thing. When it shifts into second gear, it pushes on this piston right here, and there's a spring under there that softens that shift. And you just see how much trash is in there. This training's been into and been modified quite a bit, so we really want to look at it when we put it back together to see what they did to it, because we don't like a lot of stuff people do, and we change them up so much to where they'll physically last. So now these trannies too are bad about beating these metal check bolts through these plates. Right through here, you can see it's starting to do it. Just a little bit, not much on this plate. The plate's in pretty decent shape. But I can show you here where this check ball is just stuck in these holes right here. You can't even get them out. So they do make a neoprene ball like this that you can put in here. It's a smaller ball than this. They come in the 48 REs, 47s, and stuff like that in the crossover trannies. Get you some of them, put in there, and it'll just eliminate that right off the bat. You don't have to worry about that no more. Let me show you something too. We had somebody ask about identifying valve body gaskets on this tranny. It's really simple to do. The overhaul kits will come with two different style of valve body gaskets. They'll come with a round hole and a round hole gasket right here, or they'll come with a round hole and a square hole. If you look how I'm holding this plate. So if you get a round hole gasket here and here, it does not go on a square plate. So it takes a square gasket. Let me find a gasket just to show you, that way we don't get you confused. Now here we go. We have a round hole, round hole. See, that plate has a square hole right there. If you put a round hole where that square hole is, you just messed up. So just look at it real simply. Just look for your two gaskets, because your kit's going to come with two different gaskets in it, and you're going to have to pick between them. So that's how the easiest way to identify them. Now if you do a later style and the gasket is physically glued to the plate, and they do make them, leave it alone. Don't try to grind it off. If it looks good on both sides, take some grease and kind of put it on there and try to set it down in there and lock it back into its existing seat of the gasket. And the same way when you put the gasket back on it, or the valve body back on top. It'll have markings, you can see it. Tighten it, set it down in there, you can kind of wobble it and it'll fall right into that spot. Put the bolts in, torque it back down. Don't grind that off and try to put a new gasket on it. You'll destroy the plate. We've done hundreds of them that way and we don't have no issues. So, but they do make them bonded, but they don't come off. This one here is your 3/4 clutch piston. When it goes to fourth gear, excuse me, it applies this, pushes down on it, softens the shift like that. We take and double stack these pistons and block this plumb off with another piston where it doesn't move at all. Firms fourth gear up quite a bit. Let me show you something down here, real easy. This is how this locks in the park right here. You can see it, it'll turn and lock in. Back it up, turn, lock in. Like that. Locks in. We had one come in the other day that was locked in park. And what happened was, after so many times of locking this in the park, this little pin right here wore off on the edges. Right here, and it bowed it outward this way. So when this come off, it almost come off the end. And what it did, it come off so far, it got hung behind here like that. See? And all was this right here was flared out to where it let it go too far in and get hung behind there. That's why you couldn't pull the shifter out of park. Y'all need to go to our YouTube page on Crich Precision Transmissions.com.
That's our website.
Our website.
Yeah, and then our YouTube is Precision Transmission. Go on there, subscribe, go check us out. You can see these videos on Facebook or YouTube. We're gonna have a little bit of everything everywhere.
And we're going to get in here and look at all the wear points on this thing real quick. This tranny's going to be wore out worse than I thought it would probably be. We didn't know. You know, Corvettes are always hard on them. So you can see here where this rotor's been running. It's just got it dug out from here to here. Where you have a suction that comes in right here through your filter. And then your pressure is physically over here on this side. So if you get a groove wore from here to here, and here to here, you can't build no pressure because it's just constantly circling it around. It can't build no pressure. So this pump here is wore out right here in that respect. We'll look down in here. They did put a seal retainer on these since they did upgrade them from the old school 700s. They also put a lip in the pump. Trying to go through some wear points here to look for stuff to show you. You always want to look in here. You can see all the bluings off here where the paddles run for the pump. This is totally wore out. You'll get it wore in here too. Also, this pin right here is so critical. People don't realize how critical this pin is. Well, this pin will wear too, and you can see it right there. It's already started to wear. You can barely see a little lip right there. But what happens when it does that, it lets this cock sideways on this pin that sets in that pump. It don't keep it straight, working back and forth like it should. Almost all of them that come in are wore right there. We have to replace that pin. So you really want to look at that close. The 4L65s come with a single spring in the pressure or the stoppage for the pump. The earlier styles have a 2-spring. So you want to make sure that's right because this I believe it's programmed into the computer, so you really want to be careful with it. They did away with the O-ring that's in the pump body right here. They put a hard seal in here like this to seal it instead of physically having an O-ring that goes around. This is your band anchor. That sets in your band like this. And then you have your servo that comes in on the side that applies your band, like that. Around this drum that's fried.
Really fried.
So you can see this is just totally wasted. Now this is just a stock band that they have in here. I already have a high performance band soaking.
It'll take up the whole.
We pre-soak these bands. That way when we put them in, they work just the way they're supposed to be. This material here is just cooked. It's a paper-like material. So this material here is a real high graphite style. It really grips really good. And it physically covers almost the whole drum, where that band doesn't cover half the drum. The only reason it's like this is because it's been rattling around like this. That's why it looks like it's been covering the whole drum, but if you get up there, it only covers barely any of it at all. So your second gear band and your fourth gear band goes around this drum. You have your reverse clutch in here. You can tell somebody's been in it playing. They've done some grinding on the back of clutches and taking up some clearance. This clutch, believe it or not, people think you need to tighten it up, but it has no reason to be tightened up because it's a reverse clutch only. Actually, this clutch needs to stay loose because it's never applied going down the road. It's always spinning in between these steels. So if you tighten it up a bunch, you can burn that clutch up without it even, because it's only applied in reverse. Just put it back the way it's supposed to be and you'll be fine. Now this is your 3/4 clutch drum, your forward clutch, and your third engine brake clutch in this drum here. They do sell a billet drum, billet shaft that you can put in here if you run a slick or something like that. Now this is the 3/4 clutch. It's toasted. I think this guy actually drove this car here. I don't know how he made it, but now you can see they're just totally toasted. This has a 6 clutch, 3rd gear in here. Now when we go back, I got a set of soaking that we'll clean up and I'll show you real quick. I'll re-clean these, but just kind of give you an idea. We go back with a 14 clutch, 3rd gear. It's just night and day difference in how this thing works. So that's another upgrade. These load springs, never leave them out. If you leave them out, you already caused a big problem. This is the #1 reason why this clutch probably burned up to start with. These springs start failing, and when they start failing, we start having band and clutch timing issues. So when you rebuild this tranny, always put some really good load springs in it, if not brand new ones if you can find them. They're starting to get scarce because everybody thinks they can leave them out and throw them away, but they do that and they actually going to burn the tranny up doing it because they think it shifts hard, but what happens is it's actually a clutch and band issue. This band's still on while this clutch comes on, and that spring's designed to slow this clutch down from coming on. So if you take them out, the clutch comes on so fast and the 2nd gear's still on. So you think it's a really hard shift, but it's a bind up. So that's a no-no. I can tell this guy does a lot of manually shifting just because of this engine brake clutch right here. This thing's only used in manual 3rd, and if not that, it just idles around, but I can tell he does do a lot of manual shifting. Now this is the forward clutch. 5 of them. You do have a wave that softens it when you put it forward, and plus this piston right here we were showing to you earlier. Also, when you put in forward gear, this piston is applied to soften it also. So without these in there, it really bangs in the gear. So they had an issue with people complaining, so they really did a double whammy on trying to soften the engagement in the drive. got one little snap ring that holds this together. It holds the input the output shaft in right there. So this does have a 5-pinion planet. Your standard is a 4-pinion. So it does have an updated planet in it. Planet still looks really nice. Now we do get wear right here in this area. You can feel the, let me get this shell out and I'll show you. You can see this wash or bushing right here. It runs right here like this. So you get a lot of wear. There's a groove right in here cut all the way around. This is the new one. And we put new bushing and stuff in there, but that's it'll always have wear there. You'll always have to replace that on a rebuild, so you need to buy it when you get it right off the bat. You want to look at your teeth here for pitting, because this gear is working in low gear and it is what pushes the car the hardest. Look for any type of pitting. So we'll get that cleaned up and look at that just a little bit better, because you want to. Oh, and what they did too is, I want to stress this right here. This has like a brute hardened shell in it. This shell is really heavy. This thing, I don't know what it weighs. We've never weighed one to see, but I'll tell you why we don't do this. This drum right here is turning twice inch in RPM. So when this thing comes, shifts to second gear, it has to come to a stop on this drum right here. So at 6,000 RPM, this drum's turning 12,000 RPM, and when it shifts to second gear, this band has to stop this from all spinning. Okay. Well, when you put these brute shells in there, this thing is so heavy that you get all that initial weight spinning. Just can you imagine trying to make it come to instant stop when it shifts to second gear? So what we do is we go with a lightweight shell, but it's got a hardened end on it right here, where they strip out and they break off. But they take and heat treat this right here, and we've never had an issue, and it weighs half the weight this shell here does. This thing weighs a ton. So now you got this lightweight shell in there having to come to a stop. It just stops it so much easier. You can tell night and day just by the shift, by putting that shell in there. Hit this snap ring here. But this does have a 5-pinion rear planet in it too, back here in the back. All Corvettes will have them. Your Cadillac Escalades and stuff like that too will have them. They're really nice. And then here is your another culprit that causes a lot of issues. So what they got here, this clutch here is your low reverse clutch, and then you have your reverse clutch that sets down in this drum right here. So both of these clutches come on in reverse to back up. You soften it twice with a bevel plate, that's bevel, and then a wave plate that's wavy. So that's really nice to back up, but if you got somebody that likes to do it in manual low and manual shift this thing, when this band comes on for second gear, when you shift it, this clutch has to come off. Well, that band comes on so fast, this wave, being a wave, keeps that clutch on until that wave is relaxed. So what we do is we take that wave out, put 2 flat steels in there, reset the clearance, so no more than that thing moves, that clutch is off, instead of having to relax a wave plate until that wave plate's relaxed, and then the clutch is off. So no more than you move the shifter the second this thing's off, your second gear band's on instantly. It changes the shift totally, and it's even makes it a lot easier on this little clutch right here too. So, but everything looks really good. We'll get this thing cleaned up. It needs a couple pump pieces, a few hard parts, all new clutches, bands, bushings, stuff like that. So we'll get this thing together for him and get it going. He'll really enjoy it for sure. Y'all have a good day.